can see people are starting to filter in, so thank you for attending. I'm Steve with GatherUp. We'll wait another minute or two, just let people filter in, and then we'll get started with our really exciting topic today on AI. For those just signing in, thanks for joining. We will have this webinar recorded and we will be sharing out the slides likely on Tuesday. We recognize some summer Friday action here, so it'll be a limited day tomorrow, but we'll make sure to get this out early next week. So you'll have slides and the recording, as well as some really helpful materials from our guests today on the webinar. All right, I think we got 1 or 2 minutes after, so I think we're pretty good. We got a nice amount of attendees. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll get started here. I know it's busy, it's summer. I'm sure a lot of people have things they are working on, but we're really excited to bring this month's topic on AI and driving efficiency. We have some really great guests to get to in a second, but a couple housekeeping things. Again, if you just joined, we'll have the recording, we'll have slides to send out early next week. If you have questions, the Q&A should be open. If anybody wants to throw something in there just to make sure it's working, that'd be great. We'll go through questions at the end. We have some topics we want to get to and want to make sure we get through all the information we're going to share. So we'll take some questions at the end. There should be plenty of time for that. But as we're going, if something comes to mind, feel free to drop it in there. And I think that's it for housekeeping. So let's get started. Thanks again for joining. With me today is Bowen. She is co-founder of Conversations by Amy, a AI platform for having customer conversations and deriving great insights from that. She's been in digital marketing for 20 years. And Jay, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what Conversations by Amy is all about.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having us here today. So as you mentioned, my background is in marketing automation, and marketers have been using AI and CRMs and digital media buys for many, many years. And so it was a very easy transition to move into AI, and as we use it more as marketers. Having worked with Amy now, Amy is a human-like proactive AI automating conversations to support customers. And since the deployment 4 years ago, we've exchanged over 50 million messages with humans, drawing on past conversations to improve the next conversation. So really empowering goal-driven conversations for some of the world's largest brands, which is really exciting.
Awesome. Great expertise. We're excited to have you. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Our next guest, Katy Zasada. I said that right? Right. Zasada, Senior Strategy Director from Location 3. Location 3 is a franchise-focused agency out of the Denver, Colorado area, and she's leading their first AI task force. Welcome, Katy.
Thank you. Excited to be here too. So yeah, just a little bit more about Location 3. Like you said, we're an omni-channel digital marketing agency for franchise and multi-unit brands, but we do also work with quite a few enterprise B2B and B2C corporations. Yes, we're in Denver, go Nuggets, I have to say that. And so as part of this strategic advisor team, we primarily work with our clients to grow marketing programs, but certainly impact their business bottom line. And I'm a co-lead. I have to give a shout out to my other co-lead for the AI task force. It's a handful of employees that volunteer to participate, so it's still relatively fresh, just in the past few months. We really just primarily focus on researching and testing the AI tools and platforms. We want to, eventually develop more point of views, big picture thinking for our agency and for our clients. So just a lot of testing and learning right now. And we really want to do this responsibly with caution, knowing that there's always going to be like a need for a human touch for these different tools. And We also do actually have a Microsoft and Bing task force. So there's certainly some overlap between the two, but we really just want to kind of keep our finger on the pulse, and we're all just drinking from the fire hose at this point.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're all in that mode right now. So very happy to have you here and have that agency perspective, especially since you're leading a team specifically devoted to this topic. I am Steve Hartman. For those that haven't been on before, I've been with GatherUp for 4 years now, and I am the product marketing manager. And my main function, I like to say, is that I am the connection point between our customers and our internal product, CS, and sales teams. So happy to be here, happy to run this webinar, and ready to get into the topic. One last thing, GatherUp, if you're not familiar, we are a platform that helps businesses and agencies gather, engage with, and share customer feedback at every step of the buyer journey to help you create great experiences and retain customers. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to start off with how AI works and why that should matter for your agency or business, if you're just a business joining us today. Next, we'll get into like getting started, some of the initial things to think about, where to begin. It is, as Katie said, drinking from the fire hose a little bit. So our experts here will help you get started. And then we have some templates and tools, some ideas on how to use it, some simple things that you can do internally. And then the last piece is, using that to scale, enhance your service, some best practices, things like that. So without further ado to our agenda, let's roll in. As most of you probably know, in the last few months, especially, we've learned more and more about AI, the uses for it, what it can do, what it maybe can't do in some instances. Jay brought this up, that AI actually goes back to like the 1960s and has kind of had a rebirth since 2012. Although I think 2004 is when the movie I, Robot came out, and that's where I think AI, at least for me, was like, whoa, this is like real creepy. But yeah, it's just a really, growing part of everyone's business, whether you're an agency, whether you're a small HVAC dealer, a software company, you are probably dipping your toes in AI at this point. I'm going to let Jay take this one because AI seems really confusing, and I'm sure she can, distill it down so that all of us can understand more about like what actually it is. I think we all have our perceptions, but Jay, I'll let you.
Yeah, and like Steve said, AI is artificial intelligence. So whether it's in farming or in marketing or in business data, it's really just automating tasks and taking large amounts of data sets and recognizing those patterns and errors, then adjusting its functions and algorithms as needed to make the new job better or perform better. So it's really taking large amounts of data, reading it, and improving efficiencies within that organization. So, you could be using it in marketing, you could be using it on your farm, you could be using it in your factory, you could be using it to know when there's going to be a deficit in machine parts for your cars that you're building. There are many places that this works, but what it's taking is large amounts of data and small amounts of data and creating actions out of that to prepare you to understand in a large scale what is coming. And it is moving towards achieving your company goals as well. So it's really just artificially creating that intelligence for your organization and to improve the performance of your staff and your team. Just to make it more simple, to explain it like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And you hit on a couple of these points too, on like why that matters. Like that's a lot of like, okay, this is cool, but what does it actually do for me? And some of the things that we see already are, reducing the human error, right? Like humans by nature make mistakes. The AI can, if prompted poorly or what have you, might not give you the result you want, but it's much less likely. It can speed up a lot of those tedious things. We'll get more into that later. Ultimately, some of that stuff is really about saving you money. And then, Jay, you mentioned the analyzing large amounts of data, providing faster insights, doing things that would take us weeks I think of like market research information, right? Like that stuff can take a lot of time. And if we're able to turn that around in hours or minutes instead of days or weeks, that is just a huge help to all businesses.
Right.
The other piece of this is it's just, the financial side, right? Like the higher profit margins. This isn't like hey, human capital goes down, we can get rid of people. It's just maybe those jobs change a little bit. But I think most see this as a trend in a positive now that we've spent some more months with the, ChatGPT bringing more media attention to it. It's more around, how are we changing versus, replacing and things like that. And, I think that's something that people can get scared from it. And Jay, we had talked and exchanged some thoughts around like the media isn't necessarily helping with this.
Right.
And, it's so like, how do you think that has shaped the conversation, the media coverage of it and versus reality?
Well, I think, they've jumped on it in a negative point of view, and people who haven't been working in this space, are scared of it and, scared that it may steal their jobs or it's going to impact negatively. And they have these negative thoughts of Terminator coming in and taking their jobs and taking over the world. But if you think about what we've been doing for many years as marketers and digital marketing people, we've been using it to help with customer journeys, to have conversations with customers. And it has been there. We just didn't know. I mean, I know this is a terrible example, but my brother's a farmer. He's like, no, I will never have AI on my farm. And then he goes on to tell me that his new cows go into this box and then they get, they know their tag gets read and then they get the specific amount of milk with vitamins. And then, that cow gets fed. I'm like, dude, that is AI. He's like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. I'm like, yeah, you've been using that for many years. You have AI on your farm. As marketers, we have it to have proactive conversations with our customers. We automate our tasks, we incite and have proactive interactions with our customers. It's been there for a long time and it's working, and we're seeing the results of that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree.
And Katy, from the agency side, you guys have a special task force that you guys are doing a lot of research and stuff. How does that work? Just from like getting stakeholders to buy in, like how do obviously you guys have invested and thought, okay, this is important, but like, what are those conversations like? And how did you get to that point where you knew this was important enough to have a special team?
Yeah, well, I think, like Jay was just saying, it's been around a long time. Machine learning has been around a long time. It's not necessarily anything new. I think it's just this recent proliferation of it in the news and ChatGPT and Bard just blowing up that really put this front and center. But we've been doing this with Google and Microsoft for years in terms of ad campaigns and dealing with large mass amounts of data, providing outputs in terms of how we can better optimize our campaigns, our target audiences, our bid strategies. So, we have to remind ourselves that while there are certainly a lot of new tools out there and some new data science, API advancements and technology, a lot of it is just still there. And in terms of, utilizing some of these new tools for our clients outside of what we have been doing, like I just mentioned, is a lot of testing and learning and seeing where it makes sense for our business. So I think you still have to keep that overarching marketing goal in mind, just because, there's some new and flashy tools that are out there.
And
Right.
if you think about the industry that we're in, we're agencies, we're tech companies, we are industry leaders and early adopters of technology, always. I mean, I remember trying to convince people to get a website in the early 2000s, and they were like, I don't need a website. And speaking to banks about e-commerce, like, why would we do that? It was such a hard thing. And now if you don't have a website, you're dead. We need to reframe the argument. We are the leaders. We are the thought leaders on this stuff. We need to reframe that argument and say, this is what AI is for. It's for task automation, content generation, human representation, insightful extractions of data, complex decision-making, and human augmentation. We need to lead that conversation, and we need to reframe that argument, because we are the leaders in this space, and we need to talk to our brands and our companies about that and speak to them about this,
It's great. I'm ready to go. Let's do it. Got me pumped up,
Go,
Jay.
Steve, let's go. Lead charge.
All right. So I think we've established like this is here. It's available. We can use it. Let's talk about like where do you start, right? It's a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot of tools. I mean, it came from like, was it like December, November, ChatGPT, and all of a sudden now there's like 100 different
Right.
things for any specific prompt you want to write or output you want to get. So let's talk about like some of the tasks. And I think both of you have some expertise on different ones here. But one thing, Jay, you had brought up was like, if it's 80% repetitive, consider using AI for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where you could start with some of this stuff. Is that where you would begin?
Yeah, I would definitely think about that. I mean, if you think about when you engage with customers, they're like, where is my order? How do I return my product? How do I get a refund? How do I cancel? 80% of those engagements you're having, you can automate that with a proactive chat. And that chat is going to work towards a better goal for next time. So it's creating an efficiency, and it may be reducing cancellations or increasing upsell of your product. That is something that you can use AI for. And the 20% that is really valuable, let a person handle that. Let them take that. And also you're decreasing errors, because if you're onboarding a new sales agent in insurance or banking, think of the legislation and compliance that human has to learn for the first day of their job to be able to speak to a customer. And they're right out of school or whatever, and they have to know all these laws. Well, the AI or Amy, for example, reads that in 10 minutes and knows all that and can have these really smart conversations with people and be compliant, which is great.
That's a really good point on the compliance piece, because that is, I mean, for certain industries, that is just a bear. So yeah, we'll go into more detail on each one of these now moving forward. Somebody asked about personal productivity. That's essentially like you as a person or on a team, like how do you use the tool to, maybe it's, I'm a email copywriter and I want to have ideas for subject lines or something like that. So more to come on that. We'll get to that one. Let's start with content and SEO. Like I see a lot on Twitter and LinkedIn about this use of AI to help with like meta descriptions, tags, updating code, things like that. Katy, you guys do a lot in content and SEO. Is there, any tips that you have for people who are starting and saying, hey, all right, I think this is an area we have a lot of repetition, some tedious tasks, we can utilize that. And where would you kind of start in terms of content and SEO using AI?
Yeah, for sure. I tend to gravitate towards ChatGPT. No surprise there. I think we're going to be hearing that tool a lot today. There's a couple of others that we are testing. There's one specifically called copy.ai as well. And we're going to get into this a little bit further into this presentation, but it's all about the importance of prompts and how well you can prompt the engine to get the output that you desire. So whether that's, updating landing page copy, ad copy, keyword lists. I listened to a webinar the other day with SMX about link building and kind of how we can feed that tool what we need to get out of it, essentially. And so just test and play around with it. I know typically the first round of results that you get is not going to be like the end all be all. And then always fact check, check for bias, make sure that the sources are accurate. I was just listening to someone discuss how they had an output list of sources based on what they were querying, and some looked really reputable, like it was National Geographic and a couple of other big kind of players, and the links were broken. So just, you always have to do your due diligence. This isn't going to take anyone's jobs, like we were mentioning earlier. It's you still have to have that strategic and like that creative mindset when you're using any of these tools. But we're currently testing some variations of these tools with a couple of clients, whether that's I guess specifically on this slide for the SEO component, we're essentially we don't want something like ChatGPT to write an entire blog post for us, for instance. Like you can automatically tell if a piece is completely AI written. So instead, we want to test to see previously written blog posts or landing pages, feed it into ChatGPT, give it some sort of prompt, like how would you revise this for ultimate organic optimization? Bits and pieces of that, whether that's like the meta description or the page titles, H1 tags, put that live, let that run for a couple of months and see if it did indeed enable that blog post, for instance, to perform better. So did it get more traffic? Did it get more click-through rates? Was that content actually beneficial? So again, in the early stages, that's really still kind of in play. I can't speak to how that test is actually going to turn out, but just some ideas of how we're trying to get creative with testing out some of these tools and not breaking anything.
Right.
I think with content as well, what's great is you can identify content gaps. There's content that's great for SEO, but then that's to get new customers. And we know it's way more expensive to get new customers than to retain old. And I think what's also important is using AI, and we do that, and we look at what we call as data famine, is that you don't have enough content in-house to support your existing companies. And so with that AI, you're able to identify, are the questions that people are asking, do we have the content to answer those questions and create more efficiency? Is the content that we're creating smart enough to answer those questions? And to be able to really identify those gaps in content is so important for marketers to be able to know, is the content that I'm creating not only achieving those SEO goals, but is achieving those retention goals for those existing customers that we do have, which is really important too.
Yeah, one thing on that content and SEO specifically, and this could be a whole nother webinar, but like search results and how that might change with some of the, it could look different. I've seen Sterling Sky put out a couple of things where it looks like somewhat similar. The local pack looks similar, but it's a little bit different. And why is it different? And those types of things. So that's for another session probably.
Yeah. Search generative experience. I recommend on the wait list if you haven't, you as in anyone listening, haven't done that yet, because it's really neat and no one necessarily knows quite yet how exactly, you said, how that's going to affect the SERPs, how that's going to affect advertising. It's a very much like generative chat search result experience. So it's fun to play around with.
Right. It is. On the paid advertising side, a lot of things here around like ad copy, image generation, tools like Dolly, Midjourney, things like that can be helpful on creating images for your advertisements. Bid strategies, Katie, you had mentioned that. Improve predictive ad performance. So, obviously Google's doing a lot of this as well, but anything on the paid side that you guys are seeing that's like maybe unique or things you want to call out here?
I think going back to what I mentioned earlier, like Google and Microsoft, or Bing, whatever you want to call it, have been doing this already. So I do consider that AI and machine learning. They're just getting a little bit, I think, smarter with some of the new features that they're coming out in terms of how they're enabling us to optimize these different campaigns. But then a big one here too, I think, is competitive data, seeing how your competitors are performing in tools like ChatGPT, market research, like you mentioned earlier. But I think also, a big one here is going to be GA4. That's a huge also buzzword, as I'm sure everyone knows, next few weeks, certainly. But I think, how can paid search and like new GA4 predictive modeling and conversion forecasting, like how is that going to work? So also a big plug to play around with GA4 if you haven't yet already.
Yeah. And also looking at, as marketers, when we're running paid campaigns, our strategies were search query, dedicated landing pages, dedicated messaging. Now with AI, we know what they put in the search query. We can take them straight to those products and ask them more personal questions about what they search for in Google. So, you search for a shovel. Okay, great. What kind of shovel do you want? What are you using it for? And it's navigating you right to that page. Have you used shovels before? Are you using it in your garden? Are you using it for construction? And these proactive chats are not only identifying, what you typed into the search bar, but it's also taking you to that page and then also knowing, do you want to buy now or you're just researching? Because those are very different journeys too. And it can then navigate through that customer journey. And so there's a lot of brands using this and understanding, using those chats to be able to navigate those customers to different parts of their site. If you think of travel, you start thinking and researching 72 days before you book. Now I can understand this. I'm just researching. This is a whole different journey than I'm ready to book my flight right now. So it's really exciting where this can go.
Yeah, I mean, it's like closing, or not closing, but just bringing that customer journey more seamless, or creating more seamless one, right? Like it's like you said, like that example is great. Travel, like you might not see you might say, hey, I started here, but at this point is when I book my hotel. This is the point I book my car. And then you can start having that more seamless process.
I think that's a big thing.
You're an OTA, you understand where they came in, you understand that cycle, you can have those conversations, those proactive conversations, you know where they are in the buying cycle and when they're about to book what, and really be proactive with that, tying it into your CRM. It's phenomenal. It's just amazing. As a marketer, it's very, very exciting.
Katie, anything to add? I think you were trying
touch points essentially is a big thing too, in terms of GA4, like what Jay was saying, like how can we differ our marketing strategies based on where a user is coming from your site, which channel they came from, and then exactly tailoring your campaigns based on those different channels. So information, but that I was saying the data doesn't lie, so just go for it.
That's right. That's a good segue, as we talk about that customer journey into the customer interactions. So this is more, on your site, perhaps, where you're having those conversations. Jay, you had mentioned the conversations with the Google search titles. So knowing what they had searched and entering that into the proactive chat, responding to feedback, reviews, sentiment driven, gathering of feedback, sales outreach, like, if you have a sales organization within your company, using some of the AI tools to lead that. I think a lot of agencies we talk to are, how do I grow? How do I have better relationships with my clients? But how do I also get more clients? So that sales and outreach component can be pretty important. Can you expand on maybe some of the things you've seen using AI to help with those sales outreach conversations?
And we look at, personal productivity, and someone actually touched on this in the Q&A, is, we look at this as personal productivity because these tools are there to support agents and to support staff as well. It's not really to take their jobs, but to make them better at their jobs. There was a Stanford University study that just came out that I can share it after. It's made customer support 14% more productive because they have the information right at hand to be able to provide the information that they need, so they don't feel insecure in their jobs. They don't feel like they're giving the wrong information. They're becoming better at the job. So customer satisfaction's going up, they're less likely to speak to a supervisor, and that agent churn went down, which is great. That's what you want. It's terrible having to rehire people all the time. And so if you think about those proactive chats and having this conversation with the data that you have, it's improving that customer experience. And then through that, because it's so smart, you can see if someone's angry. If they're angry, the conversation needs to be better. If they are trying to cancel their license because their father died, the AI can say, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. This is a really tough time for you. Let me see how I can help. It feels like you're talking to a human and you feel validated for what you're going through, and it's a way better experience for you. And just having to deal with some of that. I know I've had to cancel internet and change phones, and having to speak to a text message bot where you can only pick answer 1, 2, and 3 is extremely frustrating. You don't have to have that, and you're just having a conversation flow. We've seen that 43% of people don't care if it's a chat bot. They just want to be helped, and they want to be helped now. So that's the real benefit of it, and people are happier with that.
Right. I think you brought up the goal-based automation too. So if you set like here's the end result that we want to achieve. And if the
Right.
customer starts diverting to a different direction, the chat can actually bring it back. The AI chatbot can actually bring it back to try to get them to that end goal.
It's like, oh, you came on here because you wanted to cancel this thing, but now you've gone off this way. Let's talk about how I can help you, navigate you to what you need and the information, or give me your information so that I can help you and get through this. And it all ties into your ecosystem and CRM. So you're having a real one-on-one flow with that person and making them feel better about the task that they want to achieve. And most people just want to get it done and get out, and would prefer not to speak to a person on the phone. I just want to get it done and get on with my day, you know? So that makes it so much easier and more efficient for businesses to get that through there.
So we talked about this a little bit. We talk personal or team productivity. I mean, these are things we use internally, right? Like I'm sure a lot of you do. Summarizing your meeting notes, just like, hey, nobody has to take notes. Human error. Oh, I wasn't listening, so I missed 10 minutes of the meeting. This just summarizes it, gives you that recorded, and then pulls out the highlights and things that we need to do and next steps. Project planning, identifying marketing gaps. I thought was a really interesting one too, like being able to look at what we're doing and how we're doing well, and maybe we're missing something obvious that we haven't thought of because we're human and we make mistakes. So I think there's a lot of things that you can do. I'm sure this could all be related to home stuff too. Make my house run more efficiently. I don't know, just speaking for whoever, not me for sure on that one, but
That's a good point. And another one too that we haven't implemented yet, but it's been thrown around, and I think agencies or people that have to track their time, I think it's safe to say, is bane for all of our existence with hourly time tracking. And there's tools that are out there that could potentially help with that or help streamline that. So there's a wealth of new tools that are out there. You just have to make sure too that whatever tools that you're using have that longevity, and it's not just this bright shiny new object that's going to potentially, or like a startup or what have you, that just might not last long. So I think underlying all this is just importance of vetting these different tools too.
Right.
And also, like, if you think about, because we've had to create as marketers a lot of content for knowledge bases and all of that. It's being able to have these tools now and this data that is providing more information for the staff and the customers for what they actually need, and driving better messaging to those customers, or for that ad copy, or for whatever, because it's reading that data and just making them better at their jobs.
Yeah,
it's great.
The employee and the HR functions within this is something that I personally hadn't thought of a lot of, but like this is, I think it makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking to an HR company because, a lot of the HR requests is, how much PTO do I have? When is my next available XYZ? And this, people are so busy, all of that stuff can be automated and, and just dealt through with the system, which is great.
Right.
Yeah.
You both kind of touched on some tools, so that is our next topic. And so let's talk about some templates, tools, things that people can actually use, go out and test on their own, try a few things. We broke this down. We have a list here. It's not the full list by any means. It's just some of our favorite tools and things that we've been using. So each task kind of has their own specialty or focus area. Conversations by Amy listed under the customer support. You could probably use it for multiple things, but we use ChatGPT. I've used Midjourney, DALL-E I had mentioned for image generation. Katy, maybe you go first. Any favorite of yours or things that you guys are finding really extremely helpful in a certain area?
Yeah, I think when we first especially started this task force, one of the questions that kind of came up is like, what are we trying to solve? What do we see most often that's like a client pain point that they're experiencing that we could use AI to help solve or eradicate or help in some way? And we all landed on creative, whether that's assets, images, video, content. Not every company certainly has in-house designers, and if they do, I'm sure they're kind of pulled every which way all the time. So for us as an agency to receive, frequent and really just tremendous content and creative is always a little bit of a pain point. So that said, a lot of the creative tools that I've been looking at are Dream Studio was really neat. Midjourney, I agree with you. That was neat, although that interface I think is extremely complicated and not super easy to navigate through. And then, yes, like we said, content is a huge one here. So copy.ai was decent. ChatGPT so far has been hands down the one that has been providing the most rich content, regardless of the prompts that we're giving it.
What about you, Jay, outside of your own software, any other tools that you use and find helpful?
I mean, I definitely am a ChatGPT and Bard fan. I actually use them both at the same time, and it's, really great tools, especially to kind of ignite some ideas when you're writing content and looking at trying to target different audiences. Those two are my favorite. When I use SEMrush actually a lot because to identify where people are coming from, and then to also, when I'm running ads, looking at those other ads that my competitors are running is actually very, very helpful in that tool. But I think for me, a big one is really understanding content gaps. As a marketer, that's the hardest thing is, where are those gaps and how can I fill those gaps has been a big thing for me to be able to use kind of a multiple of tools to get the right content that is going to engage my target audience. And, I sit between SEMrush, ChatGPT, and then obviously using Amy to identify those content gaps has been very helpful for myself and our customers that are building large amounts of content and using that data to make it better. It's been really great.
Yeah, one other one that I would call out is, it's been around for a while, but Google's Cloud Vision AI, really helpful for if, putting images on your website. It helps identify, what is this image actually an image of? Is it a dentist or is it a doctor?
Yes.
Those types of things. And that can be obviously very important for search engine results and things like that. So.
Right.
The other thing is, like, with all these tools, like, get creative and think of different things that you could use these for. We talked a little bit about like language translation, Excel formulas. I forget which one of you two is using that, but that was kind of curious. I think you should share that with the group on how Excel and using AI with Excel.
Yes, I've been doing that. So I do, obviously, part of my role, a lot of outbound lead generation. And I actually integrated OpenAI into my Google Sheets, ran a query, and it identifies not only the companies, but the CEOs, plus what they're interested in, what an intro email would look like in messaging, and then it provides a couple of talking points based on what that LinkedIn profile is interested in. And I can actually share a template of that after, but it was so fun to just play around with that. I was so excited because I'm kind of an Excel nerd. So I was like calling my mom, who's also an Excel nerd, and I was like, Mom, you need to see what Excel can do now in Google Sheets. But just integrating those two things has been really exciting to just play around with. And it's so smart. It's so clever how it works, so it's very exciting to play with those new tools and to learn new things, which is really cool.
Katy, any unique use cases that you've come across either personally or within your team there at Location 3?
Well, for the Excel formulas in particular, or just
in general, just unique.
Yeah. Like I said, I think the image assets has been huge. Competitor research, that certainly saves a lot of time. Like you were saying in the very beginning, like the really big purpose of this is to take some more mundane tasks or things that would normally take a couple hours, couple days, couple weeks to do. So that's been really helpful. And then templates, that's been a big one. There's another tool that we haven't mentioned yet called Canva that's pretty popular. We certainly have our own internal templates that we try to stick to and our own brand guidelines, but that's it's fun to play around with what's out there.
And I think talking about languages as well, we speak so heavily here in the US around diversity and inclusion, and we are getting to that as organizations, but are we really living that? And I think it's so easy to roll out translation GPTs and to be able to serve your customers in the languages that they feel most comfortable in. And we have even though Spanish is a large percentage of our population here, we have a large Mandarin population. We have a large Portuguese population. And imagine being able to serve those customers in their native language would be phenomenal, you know, and there's opportunities there now for that, which is great.
Yeah, great point. Because I mean, even outside of the US, like a lot of agencies, you know, like your guys's companies serve clients worldwide, right? So having clients that are worldwide and having these tools at your disposal where you don't have to be an expert, you don't have to even bring somebody in who speaks the language. You just now can use this tool to help you.
We're rolling out Welsh now. And I mean, Welsh is not an easy language. It's not an easy language to read or understand, but we're rolling it out and our clients are very excited about it because now they have a tool that they're now being compliant because they have to, and they're able to serve their customers in the language that they want, which is phenomenal, you know?
Yeah, so we touched on this a little bit, the templates and tools. I think Katie, you brought up like the brand, you know, keeping your brand consistent. I think that helps here, like using some of these AI tools to create these for you. And the AI can also personalize them a little bit too, right? Like bringing in certain characteristics or features that you want to call out. But you know, maybe the idea maybe is to customize these for clients. So as you look at, you know, again, those tedious tasks, like if you're building out your own templates the old way, this might take a while to do for each one of your clients, but still create a personal feel to it. And now we can do this much faster and quicker and easier.
Yep, exactly.
So along those lines, one of our first foray, and so not our last by any means, but we've used AI to help our customers create faster review responses. Two of the challenges that we always saw was like, I don't know what to write and it takes too long. So we try to address both of those with this feature. Again, I think all three of us had mentioned it, but just like make sure, double check, edit the response. You don't want to just assume it's going to have the correct feel or the correct, you know, answer to a review. So you always want to do that, but it does speed things up much faster and makes things a lot easier for our customers. To show you, this is just a real short clip here of how quick this goes. This is using ChatGPT. Boom, spits out a response. This one, I did not even have to edit it. It was perfect. So, I mean, just a great example of how easy and quick these things can create that output that you're looking for. Oh, here we go. All right, so best practices. I think we got about 20 minutes left, so we're doing just fine. On the best practices, like we just talked about, fact check. You know, I love the idea of checking multiple resources. So if you're using ChatGPT, use Bard as well.
Right.
Compare them. Look at the responses. I think is it both of them or one of them has like the view
both
other.
Both of them give 3 responses.
Yeah,
so it's good to just rotate through and see those. I found the third one is pretty lame, but the first one is pretty good. But it's good to review both and pull from all 3 of those.
Yeah. Tweak that you know, prompt that you put in. So like, you know, if it's not quite the answer you're looking for, I always think like, hey, just tweak a couple words here and there, and that can often change it a lot. And then I think everybody's talked about it today, but test and optimize. A lot of testing, trial and error with some of this stuff. Feel free to fail once in a while or find the wrong output and then tweak from there. Some of the things not to do, copy and paste. Help, Katie, you brought up the blog. Like, we're not going to let it just write a blog post, right? Like that's something we want to do. I think you know, never putting in private information like ChatGPT. OpenAI is open, so no private information, no personal information. Try to stay away from that. And then you know, relying on it to make the decisions. I think both of you have kind of touched on that too. Like, you still need that human, you still need that person to be strategic, to think about, is this the right thing? Is this what we want to put in? How do we want to use it? Those types of things. So,
and it's funny. I mean, when you see some of that content that comes back, it sounds like someone like selling the state fair. Come on down and get your stuff. And you're like, wow, that is not my voice. I'm just going to tweak that a bit. So you do need a human for that. Otherwise, it's going to sound like you're selling state fair all the time. You have to have that human input. So copywriters are so important.
Yep. And I think maybe I'll jump ahead, but the importance of prompts, which I think is next too.
Yep.
You know, there's talk of even, you know, people being so excelled in prompt writing that they'll be called like a prompt engineer. I don't know how far that'll go, but you know, it's only going to get you what you put in. And so you have to be very specific. If there's a specific tone of voice, length of the content that you need, for instance, or the image or whatever you're trying to generate, because you know it can get really specific, which is super fun on the image side if you want to throw in all sorts of goofy things like create a Ninja Turtle out of a guitar. I just totally there's fun ways that you can go about it, but then also yeah, that's it. I'll stop rambling. It's only as good as you put in.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say, right? I've even seen that internally. Our content expert here is way better at writing prompts than I am, because she has like a market research background. So she comes with this unbiased, prompt writing, and I'm always like, how come yours is makes so much more sense than mine? But there is an art to it, maybe a science. I don't know, maybe it's art and science, but there is definitely some that can do it better. So.
Right.
For ways to craft an effective prompt, just some ideas here that make sure you define the task. Be specific, as we said, and tweak it as you go. Like if you get a response and you're like, that's too general, then obviously you got to be more specific with your prompt and your ask. Providing background, such as your goal. Jay, you talked a lot about your goals and giving it the idea of what you want to accomplish. Super important here in your prompt. Again, the wording, like there's certain people that are better at it because certain people are probably better writers, but correct grammar, those types of things all can weigh into it. And then you can format that prompt too to get the output that you're looking for. Anything else that we can go into another segment on prompts, but anything high level that you guys want to share here about prompts specifically?
I think something that people might not even realize is that you can, if you're doing this for paid search ad copy, for instance, you can give them what the parameters are in terms of the number of characters. So you can get incredibly in depth. You can have it formatted into tables. It doesn't have to just be blocks of text necessarily. And then also, I may have just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I did. So
all good.
As well, but I found as well with those prompts, if it doesn't know the answer, it'll just make something up. And so really being very strategic about what you're asking and double checking what's coming back, because it'll never say, I don't know, sorry, I can't give you anything for this. It'll literally just make something up. And so, that I think where people are talking about ethics and is it correct and it's biased and all of that, I think it's pulling from places, and if it doesn't really know, it's going to pull it from somewhere totally random, and that is where we get that come through. So you really just have to go back and check that it is correct.
Right. Yeah. Great call. Yeah. Because it's only as smart as the information it has at its disposal, right? So if it's again taking information in ChatGPT's example from the web or from information that was available, there's going to be bias and there's going to be incorrect information. There's tons of that all over. So
exactly.
Right. And I think keep in mind too that it's pulling in data that's like 2 years old at this point too. So it's not even necessarily like the most accurate information that it has in its language model.
Right.
Just something to keep in mind there too.
Yeah, we've been kicking around and it's not gonna GatherUp customers is not coming tomorrow, but we've thought about, okay, so like if we fed our help guide to an AI model and then it could help provide people the answer they're looking for, that only works if our help guides are updated and accurate and the information there is most recent. Yeah. All right, we have 10 minutes left, so let's recap quickly some of the benefits I think the big one, saving time on repetitive, tedious tasks. That time, allows you and your team to be a little bit more strategic, provide that extra level of customer service to your clients. In the cases of a lot of like content and customer conversations, paid search, scaling this across your organization is much easier to do. You can do it faster. And then all of that, we talked about competitive research, but like this is to help you get a competitive edge. Because if you're not doing it, others are. So you don't want to get behind, but you also want to come with some unique use cases too that give you a leg up. So think outside the box, be creative with some of this use cases for your AI tools. Lastly, not a fad. It's been in place for a long time. How we're using it, the proliferation of it is probably higher than it's ever been, but it's been around. We've been using it. IBM Watson back in the day was a thing, right? I love the 80-20 rule. If 80% of it is repetitive, use AI or consider using AI for that. And then, one thing we talk about a lot with our customers, but I think works well here too, is like start small, get comfortable, find what works, and then scale that. It's not going to just be like, all at once, we're just going to blow this up and everything's going to be doing AI. Like you got to work with it, get comfortable with it, and then scale it. The last thing I'm going to leave with here is a quote from Lewis Halpern, the chairman at Conversations by Amy. I thought this was great. Found this on his LinkedIn, so appreciate you, Lewis, for posting this. If you're not thinking about AI, you're not thinking about the future of your business. So great words to live by there in the next few years as we continue the AI discussion. We only have a couple questions. But first, I want to thank Jay Bowen, Katy Zasada, Location 3. We will be following up with an email to everybody who registered. So you'll get a recording, you'll get the slides. Couple questions here before we go. Mary asks, will browsers be a thing of the past? Both of you can weigh in on this one. I'm curious what you say about this.
Oh, my immediate thought is definitely not, because if you think of Google and Microsoft kind of being the leaders right now in some of these AI spaces, advertising is a huge component for them. Even Meta and Facebook, if you want to go down that road too. And they're not going to want to get those ads to go away. And I think they're already starting to evolve and test into this generative AI, like I mentioned earlier, this search generative experience that Google just released. Bing Chat is a new one. Also testing out new forms of advertising for Bing Chat. It's not available to anyone really. That's a small cohort at this point that's still testing it out. So just right off the cuff, like absolutely not, because I think advertising is still going to be a massive part of this.
I have a slightly different opinion that will be probably pretty controversial, but I think people are already becoming skeptical of browsers because they know that the first 3 results are ads, that there's going to be 5 search engine results from the company that has the best SEO, and then another 3 ads below. And that if you're really looking for real content, a lot of people are moving over to Reddit or asking in communities that they're involved with around those topics of conversation, and those communities are becoming important. And I think what we're going to see is a more one-on-one conversation with your browser. And we think about when you talk to C3PO, you don't search on a browser, you ask him, hey, C3PO, I need an answer to my question. What is it? And he gives it to you. Now, is it biased? Is it true? Who knows? Where is the data coming from? But I think we're going to start to see that and what that happens. So yes, browsers will continue to serve a purpose. And yes, advertising is so important for us, but how are we moving and changing our advertising in where people are moving to get their answers and being more strategic there versus spray and pray on these browsers and hope that they are converting? It's very interesting conversation, which could be a whole other webinar for me on that. We're expecting more now from when we're looking for information and finding it in very different places now.
Definitely.
I knew we'd get controversial at some point.
Yeah,
and
we're gonna
I'm
get
glad we got
there.
it.
I know, and all the addicts are like, oh my God, who is this woman?
Yep. Katie, you did answer this in the chat, but I thought I'd bring it up too, because I think it's a good question for everyone to hear is, how can we justify our charges when AI streamlines processes that used to take up so much time? I think my answer would be that you make up that value elsewhere and you provide, deeper strategic conversations. You provide more, maybe it's just better service because you have more time to devote to those things. Jay, Katie, either one of you want to talk about charging and price and how this like actually saves them the agency time and how that might play out?
Just briefly for me, like I mentioned, it's still so much in the early stages that in terms of like monetizing this and just the rate at which these new tools come out here, we want to do this, cautiously, responsibly. So there may be ways down the road that we can do that. But I think right now, the best thing that we can do for anyone is just to foster a culture of experimentation, of testing, of learning. Within your entire agency too. So I mentioned, we're in this task force, but I think eventually we'll want all of the employees to really just be comfortable with a lot of these tools because we're not going to learn if we're in a silo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, you will get better. Like you say, you'll streamline those things. You have 10 people waiting on hold or waiting for an answer to a question, and they're waiting 10 minutes each when you could have answered them already and used your human to be more strategic with how they're dealing with their customer. And so they're just going to get better and use that money to improve and get better in your processes and how you're dealing with people and what you're creating and what you're putting out there in the messaging. So because you know now what to do and how to improve that.
Right. This next question from Walter, probably geared towards you, Jay, but Katie, if you want to chime in, great too. Which AI do you recommend for customer ticket support?
Well, we have a lot of our customers currently using Zendesk, and Salesforce has a really great service cloud that has a customer support ticketing software. What's nice about those applications is Amy is platform agnostic. She's just a tool and an intelligence that slots into those platforms and any chatbot platform, actually. But if you're using a CRM, it's best to identify which customer support, which ticketing support software feeds into that, because you want that whole ecosystem to be reading off each other and to be feeding that data back and forth for improved conversions or reaching your goals. So, we've really found with our customers, they're sitting between Salesforce Service Cloud or Zendesk, but also feeding into their CRM.
Awesome. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, so I think that will wrap it up. Thanks everybody for joining. Those that joined live, or if you're watching this on the recording, thank you for watching. Awesome stuff from our guests, Katy Zasada from Location 3, Jay Bowen from Conversations by Amy. Thank you so much. This was super fun, and it sounds like we might have to do another one. Lots to follow up on next time, but thank you both for joining us.
Thank you. It's been great.
All right. Well, have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah. Bye. Bye.
Bye.